Okay, welcome. Why? Welcome to this little interview we have arranged here by Zoom on the internet. I'm living here in Copenhagen, and why you're living in Tasmania, I think.
Yes,
It's on the other
southern
side.
end of Tasmania. Sorry.
It's the other side of the globe. So it's far away. But you are Chinese. I'm a Dane. And I would like to know a lot about some more about China because I
Mm,
read in the European papers every day, also in my own papers here in Denmark, that everything is wrong in China and they have no human rights and it's an awful place to be and everything is a disaster. But I'm not quite convinced about that kind of propaganda. So I'll ask you some specific questions. And the first question is, what do you think is the reason for the very bad relations between USA and China at the moment?
the main reason is because two countries are at the very close to each other in terms of national strength. If you look at the GDP and GNP of both nations, they are coming to quite close. When Japan's GDP was reached 70% of that of United States. United States went on a full rampage against Japan. All the media talk about unfair trade practices and so on and so forth. And it is the same things right now. What happened to Japan in from 80s onward to early 90s is the same as what happening right now to China. And basically, United States needs an enemy to justify its military spending. And if
Well, what happened? The picture disappeared.
what happened there? Okay, where
You're
was I?
back. Just continue.
Okay,
You told about
best,
Japan.
uh, so when any country that get close to US in terms of GDP, the size of economy, US will take actions against that country. It's nothing personal. It's just the way the United States is and has been, and therefore, because China,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
yep,
Sorry to interrupt you. It's just because
that's
I
fine.
have another question in line with
Sure.
the first one. But do you think that any country that wants to compete with USA, they are going to look against that kind of aggression that USA is directing against China?
Um, United States will treat any countries with aggressiveness. Doesn't matter which country it may be, because United States treated uh, regarded USSR as an arch enemy. It's the same
Yeah.
thing because militarily it was very competitive against the US, and also science it was quite close at one stage.
Yes.
Yes,
Uh, okay, so this is some kind of universal law, but what is the
yes.
moral background when USA they sent their fleet to the South Chinese Sea and they tell, well, we have bombers, we can destroy your whole country in 2 hours and so on and so forth. What is it a real threat or is it just imagination, just propaganda?
US has been doing that to many countries around the world. It is the way to exert the authority and hegemonic power to intimidate every country that United States can, to show that who is the boss. And US is a top dog, and it will throw its weight around. As simple
Oh,
as that.
okay. It's just the same as in the zoo or among dogs and among animals.
Yes, yes. It's
One,
like playground.
yeah, okay. But do you think this can end in some kind of hot war?
Um, I think at this stage it is unlikely, but there might be accident. If somebody in the front line may lose control, lose the cool, and shots are fired in anger, and then it's very hard to stop from then on. And a lot of history is just from that. It's just a simple. No one expected it to get so bad, but once it gets so bad, it's very difficult to take a step back because no one wants to back down to be seen as weak.
Okay, thank you. But when I read the papers here in Europe, I
Mm.
always read that USA, they are trying to introduce freedom all over the world. They want freedom in, especially in Hong Kong and in China and of course in every country, but they are very worried. They think they don't have any freedom in China. Is that true?
I was, um, you see, 2018 there were 155 million people travel out of China. That is, and then I think 2019 there was more than that, so close to 160 million. That's like people go in and out of China. So there's more than 10% of the China's population. And something is that a lot there are so many there are millions of Chinese studying overseas around the world, and they have lived overseas for many many years in Europe, in US, in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand, and even in Southeast Asia, in Japan, in South Korea. And guess what? Those people, most of them go back to China.
Okay, okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
But Jeff,
If China is, so,
how about American tourists going to China? Are there any Americans in China?
they are, I don't have the exact numbers, but there are large numbers of Americans living in China. And I've met someone from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh in, I think it's in near Philadelphia in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
That was the capital. That is called the steel capital of United States because Pittsburgh was famous for producing a lot of steel, but
Mm,
none of the steel factory are working right now in the U.S.
no.
And yes, and there are many. If you go on YouTube, you see people like Cyrus Jansen or Jensen
Mm,
and Nathan Rich and all this. There are many, many more Americans who live in the in China, and they can tell a lot of people what is it like. I mean, why would these people live in China for over 10 years if China is such a hellhole?
yeah,
And to
that's
to
right.
to make the record straight, I'm actually Malaysian born. I have Chinese ancestry, but I never been. But I have a lot. I play host to a lot of people in my home here. I have people coming from China and live here.
Mm,
I've lived. I have hosted Japanese and Norwegian and so on and so forth. So I met many people throughout my stay in Australia when I have a rented property and sublet it to people. So
okay, but thank you. But tell me, how about Muslims? I've read that all the Muslims in China, they are in concentration camps. Is that true?
okay. Um, a lot of these things started the allegation of Uyghurs in concentration camp started by American diplomat that participated in the human rights conference, and her name is Kay McDougall, I think. Yep. And next thing, the news was picked up by the Reuters, but so far there has been all the allegation. Now, and then it got to by World Uyghur Congress. The figures given by World Uyghur Congress is 3 million Uyghurs being detained. Now, if you look at the picture of the Super Bowl, there are 100,000 people in the Super Bowl, right? In the Super Bowl
Okay.
match.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
1 million, that is like 10 times the number of people in the Super Bowl,
Okay, yeah.
or 9 to 10 times. Now, those people require living place. In modern technology with satellite and everything, it is impossible to hide 1 million to 3 million people in concentration camps.
I think so. But tell me, China is actually on a very friendly standing with many Muslims country, for example, Pakistan. Well, if the
Yes.
Muslims are very much repressed in China in concentration camps, I suppose the Pakistani government they'll protest. What do they do?
Okay, there's this thing called OIC,
Ye-
Organization for Islamic Cooperation.
Yes,
It has 53 or 54 members
yes,
states.
yes.
Now, when the news about uh, the allegation or reports in the Western media, mainstream media, that alleged that China detained 1 million Muslim Uyghurs in western part of China. Of course, OIC was very concerned, and China invited them to come and to go to visit China and so on and so forth. And so the OIC formed a delegation with member observer from every member states, and they all went to China, to Xinjiang and nearby Xinjiang, I think Qinghai province as well. I'm not very sure, but mainly they travel around Xinjiang. Now, the Uyghurs concentrated in the southern half of Xinjiang, and the total number of Uyghurs are about 10.6, 10.7 million, around about that right now.
Okay.
But the population of Uyghurs census of in 1951 of end of 1950 it was 3.61 million, but now it's close to 11 million Muslim Uyghurs.
Yes. Okay.
So I need to point out one more thing. And um, when the U.S. talk about um, denounce China in United Nations General Assembly, denounce China about human rights against Muslims, and there are 22 countries voted to condemn China over human rights violation of Muslim.
Mm.
But interestingly, of those 22 countries, none of those countries are Muslim countries.
Uh-huh. But tell
And there
me
are
if
countries like,
let me
yeah, countries,
interrupt
yep,
and ask you if you take the whole world population, I think we are around 7 billion people in the whole world. How many
7.5,
people
yep,
7.5. Okay.
yeah.
How many people does the American standpoint represent? Do you understand what I'm talking about? The
Yes.
Americans, they say it's very bad with concentration camps and so on. And some people, some countries are supporting them. For example, I think Germany is supporting them and maybe some other European countries. But how many people do these countries represent compared to the whole
Uh,
world population?
I think many countries around the world it is inconsequential in most of the time, because countries like, out of that 22 countries that voted alongside US, a country like Latvia, Estonia,
Yeah.
Lithuania, and then of course you have other like Canada, Australia, New Zealand. These are five countries, and US close allies. And those basically, if they don't do as what US say, they'll be in trouble. And whereas, interestingly, those defended China, 58 countries that defended China, out of 17 or 18 of those are actually Muslim countries,
Ah,
like
that's very
countries like
interesting.
Saudi Arabia, Iran, Syria, Pakistan, and Egypt. Even Egypt is U.S. ally. So there are so many. Oh, 18 countries supported China. So there's something very wrong there. I think those countries have delegates that went to do the fact-finding mission to
Okay.
China.
But tell me, how about
Yes.
India? It's a very big country, and they used to be on. Sometimes they are friends with China, and other times they are not so much friends.
Um, India is a very interesting country. Main thing is India still have this the angst from what happened in 1962. There was a border 4-week long skirmishes or war, if you want to put it, between China and India. And basically, even the Indian media admit that it was a forward policy, the aggressive move into China. Eventually, they didn't expect China to retaliate because it has been happening since for over a few years, and China just had the worst famine since the founding of the communist government since 1949. So China had a 3-year famine, and they just recovered from it. And China was in its weakest point since the 1950. So
Okay.
1962 was the weakest year.
But do you think it's
Yeah.
possible for India and China to live in peace together, or do they want to
It's
conquer each other, or what?
India. I think the Indian politicians are under pressure by the media, and because the media has been pushing that narrative that China is aggressive and China have territorial design against India and so on and so forth. So China is a big bad communist government that is hell bent on taking chunks of India. Whereas
Okay.
if you read on the Chinese side, they just focus on wanting to make the average people to have a better life
Okay.
and to have. Yeah, and the element the prime target for by year 2020, end of year this year, is that to eliminate abject poverty.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the fact that World Bank, yeah, so World Bank have put a figure that China since 1980 to 2018 has elevated 850 million people out of poverty.
Mm,
That says something already.
okay. But I have two more subjects I want to ask you about. One is Hong Kong. Well,
Yes.
I've read about this security law in Hong Kong, and there are
Yep.
some persons I really can't expel their names, but there is one single person. He has been visiting USA quite a few times, I think, and he's always in the papers that he's the democratic opposition in Hong Kong. But how about Hong Kong? Is it a democracy, or how about this rule they have introduced? I think it's called the Hong Kong security rule.
Mm.
What's the idea of this rule?
Well, since Hanover returning of Hong Kong to China's sovereignty in 1997, there hasn't been any sort of those internal security law. Basically, CIA has been very active in Hong Kong, has been since then. Even before 1997, it was a hotbed for
Okay,
spying intelligence officers' activities over there. Now, about if you think about U.S., it has 16 different laws governing the internal security, like Patriots Act. That is just one example, and NSA, and many other has authorized by many various law to eavesdrop on anybody, FBI, you name it. And Hong Kong only have the first one
okay,
that's been introduced, and it is really, really small compared to what US has, or my home country, Malaysia, or Singapore, that where I used to live for 10 years.
okay. I see. Well, the last subject I want to know something about, it's about the Christians in China,
Mm.
because I know a lot of Catholics here in Denmark and also in USA, and they are very worried. They say we don't have the Catholics in China. They don't have the freedom to be Catholics. Is that true?
Um, I think the government of China is very about that there are certain type of Catholic, because during the 19th century, certain Catholic act as active helper to French,
Okay.
because French missionary during the time of Napoleon III,
Hmm.
he really backed a lot of missionary activities in China. And there are some of the very dubious and very um, criminal activities, so to speak. Because I think it's not that I say Catholic Church are bad, but the thing is there's a lot of collusion that has happened in the past. It's like Japan when you have a San Felipe incident. San
Uh,
Felipe was a Spanish ship that shipwrecked of Shikoku, but that's why that led to the killing of a lot of Christians, because when the Japanese heard about what the people say about the role of the missionaries is to function as prepare the ground for taking over by Catholic Church and invasion and so on and so forth.
okay, I
Yeah.
understand. But tell me, is the Catholic Church allowed? Are there any Catholic Church in China?
Yes. If you watch documentary film, for example, Christmas time,
Yes.
there's all the churches are full
Okay.
every year, and not only the Catholic Church, the Protestant Church as well. And there are
Yes.
not only that, there are a lot of home church. Like
Yes.
my brother-in-law used to go to China in the 80s, in the 90s, 80s and
Okay.
90s. Quite
Okay.
often, back then was more China was a lot more strict, and I would say, in my own word, is that a lot more authoritarian
Okay.
and intrusive.
Yes.
But in the last 20 years, China has been so open. And if people who visit there in the last 20 years compared to 30 years ago, say this is like different countries.
Yes, but
So
if
yeah.
someone, I've read in some Catholic paper that, well, someone they wanted to make a statue of Jesus, I believe, or Virgin Mary,
Mhm.
and it was just pulled pulled down. It was illegal to make this statue. Is it illegal to have religious figures in China?
I think it's a matter of, if you, from what I read, all right, and
Yeah.
from what I talk to people, if you get the prior approval from the city council, and
Mm,
you'll be all right.
okay.
But the thing is, in southeastern China, um, there have been a lot of evangelical Christians,
Yes.
and they have a lot of practices whereby they favor businesses that are Christians,
Mm,
and they discriminate against non-Christian businesses, that sort of things,
yes.
and they a lot of them has become so emboldened that they built a lot of extra building without prior approval and erected massive church. If you This is like 6 years ago or something. If you go to Zhejiang, especially to Wenzhou area, you see many huge cross with neon lights and everything.
Okay.
And government eventually like say, this is ridiculous. You come to this place, it's like it is like almost like a religious fanaticism that's happening, and a lot of people build these churches
Mm,
and this without any approval.
okay.
And
Okay.
China
Okay.
is still, in a lot of sense, is not very a lot of things happen without government really keep their
Mm,
hands on the pulse.
okay.
Otherwise you won't have many project that is being built without proper monitoring.
Okay,
Yeah.
last question. It's not about the Christian, but it's about Falun Gong. I
Yeah.
personally visited Hong Kong 5 years
Hmm.
ago, and when I arrived to Hong Kong, the first thing I met was some people who they gave me some papers, and these papers were all about China, and they came
Mm.
from an organization called Falun Gong. They say
Yeah.
we are promoting meditation, and we want to warn you about China because in China, all our all our members, they are put in concentration camps, and from there they are operated to take out their kidneys, and these kidneys are sold to other countries. So that's
Yes.
how we are treated in China, and we don't like that. Is that a lie?
Um,
Is that true?
I th- I think if there's any allegation of any sort like that, that is a very serious allegation.
Yes.
I think we should monitor it. But I've been reading Epoch Time that's from Falun Gong is published by the Falun Gong. You can get it all around Australia. All right, and but all those allegations are just allegations, and we don't have any proof. We don't have and of course the Western media has hop along and say a lot of many allegations to say about human harvest, organ harvesting, and so on and so forth. And we don't have any allegation that says that these people are being have their organs harvested. But you know, if it is true, then it is terrible. But the thing is, we don't have any allegation, and also Falun Gong has been like when I was, because my sister and my brother-in-law, they are very active. They were and they still are very active Christians, and they
Mm.
told us very wary about qigong, because qigong can cause people to become delirium and all those things, and become suicidal and
What is
refuse to.
qigong? Qigong. What is
Falun
that?
Gong claim that Falun Gong, they say they do the meditation, practice qigong. By
Ah,
practicing qigong, they can immune to all sort of diseases, so they
okay.
won't die from if you have any sort of cancer or uh, their sickness or anything. All you need to do is just make your offering to the organization, and you'll be blessed, and you'll recover from all those illnesses.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that has been since 1990, late 80s or early 90s. It has been around for a long time.
Okay.
Eventually, Li Hongzhi was he knows that government is going to pursue him as setting up as called like a Ponzi scheme, because he makes a lot of money from that religious activities. So
Okay. Well,
yes,
Wei-Siong, we have talked for half an hour, and I think it has been very informative for me to listen to your answers. I know you can use your whole life to study China, and but you have given us, me and the viewers, some, I would say, points to meditate, to think a little more about,
mm,
because I know that before the hot war, I hope there will never come a hot war between China and USA, but before the hot war, you have the Cold War with the ideas struggling against each other, and the American propaganda is very evil in Europe. So, and you're living in Tasmania in Australia. I believe it's somehow the same there. Am I right?
yes, it is. The xenophobic sentiment is actually very bad.
Uh,
Like the fact that Donald Trump has been saying, and this is China virus, and Pompeo
uh,
has been saying all these things, but
uh,
they stopped because they realize that a lot of people don't believe what they say. So
Oh, okay. Well, Wai-Sang, thank you very much for your wisdom and for what you have told us here. I'm looking forward maybe to talk to you another time, but first I'll have to finish
sure,
video.
okay,
So,
thank you.
thank you.